A single dad, a dying cop, and a rainy night that changed everything forever. When Patrick Miller, a humble 35-year-old single father, found Officer Melissa trapped inside an overturned police car, he had two choices: walk away or risk his life for a stranger. What happened next shocked the entire police force and created a bond no one expected. The rain fell hard, like thin silver needles slicing through the dark sky, turning the lonely highway into a river of shimmering reflections. Patrick Miller leaned forward, squinting through the windshield as the wipers struggled to clear the heavy downpour. His old pickup truck rattled softly, protesting against the cold night. But Patrick pushed on. He had to. His little daughter, Lily, was at home with a fever, and he had just picked up her medicine from the late-night pharmacy. The road around him was nearly empty, just darkness, fog, and the relentless drumming of rain on the truck's roof. Nights like these always made Patrick feel small, as if the world stretched endlessly with nobody else awake. He ran a hand through his damp hair and sighed, whispering to himself, "Almost home, sweetheart, I'm coming." He turned down a rarely used stretch of road, the headlights cutting through the mist like two thin swords. Suddenly, something strange shimmered on the wet pavement ahead. Patrick slowed down, leaning closer to the glass. The fog twisted and shifted, revealing a faint glow of red and blue flickering weakly through the night. He frowned. Police lights. Except something was wrong. As he drove closer, his breath caught in his throat. A police cruiser lay upside down on the side of the road, smashed so violently against a tree that steam poured from the hood like smoke from a wounded beast. The shattered windshield glistened under the rain. The blinking police lights were fading, almost dying, like they were struggling to stay alive. Patrick slammed the brakes so hard his truck skidded, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. His heart thudded painfully in his chest as he threw the door open and stepped into the icy rain. The storm instantly soaked him, but he didn't care. Something inside him, some instinct, some force, pulled him toward the wreckage. As he approached the overturned car, the metallic scent of gasoline mixed with the smell of wet leaves and burnt rubber. Smoke hissed from the engine, rising like ghosts in the night. Patrick's boots splashed against puddles as he hurried closer, the sound echoing with every step he took. Then he saw it. A hand. A pale, motionless hand dangling from the shattered window. The fingers twitched faintly, as if begging for help. Patrick's breath hitched. "Oh God, someone's alive." He sprinted the last few steps and dropped to his knees beside the window. Through the rain-smeared glass, he saw her, a young woman in a police uniform, her blonde hair matted with blood, her face ghost-pale. Her patrol badge glinted weakly under the emergency lights, almost swallowed by the darkness around her. For a brief moment, Patrick felt his heart freeze. She looked impossibly fragile, like a fallen angel lost in the storm. Rain dripped down his face, mixing with the fear rising inside him. He leaned closer, voice trembling. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the rain. "Help." That one word hit Patrick harder than the storm. It wasn't just a plea, it was fear, desperation, and pain woven into a single breath. Patrick swallowed hard, adrenaline exploding through his veins. "I'm here," he whispered, placing a steady hand on the twisted metal. "I'm not leaving you, just hold on." The storm raged around them, lightning flashing in the distance, thunder rolling across the sky like a warning. But Patrick didn't move, didn't look away, didn't abandon her. Because in that terrifying moment, he knew this night, this moment, this woman was about to change everything. Rain slammed against Patrick's skin as he sprinted back toward the overturned cruiser, his boots slipping on the soaked pavement. His voice echoed through the storm, raw and desperate. "Hello? Can you hear me? Please, talk to me." Lightning cracked across the sky, momentarily lighting up the broken patrol car like a scene from a nightmare. Patrick's breath fogged in the cold night air as he crouched beside the shattered window. Inside, the young female officer lay crushed between the seat and the twisted dashboard. her body pinned awkwardly, her uniform torn, soaked by rain and blood. Her face was ghost white, streaked with dirt and the deep cut on her forehead. For a terrifying moment, Patrick thought she wasn't breathing. Then slowly, painfully, her eyes fluttered open. Two soft blue eyes full of pain, confusion, and fear. They locked onto him, searching for something, hope, reassurance, or maybe just another human being in the darkness. Her voice came out as a shaky whisper, barely audible over the roar of rain. "Sir, back away! Car might explode!" Patrick's heart clenched at her bravery. Even while dying, she was thinking about someone else's safety. He shook his head firmly, water dripping from his lashes as he leaned closer. "I'm not leaving you. My daughter needs me alive, but right now you need me more. Hold on, okay? I've got you." Her breathing hitched, her lips trembling as she fought to stay conscious. "My name, Melissa. Badge, 2418. Her hand lifted weakly toward him, fingers shaking, as if giving her identity was the last thing she could offer before darkness took her. Then her eyes rolled back. Her body went limp. Patrick felt a surge of terror punch through his chest. "No, no, no, stay with me, Melissa!" He placed 2 fingers against her neck. There was a pulse, faint, but still there. He didn't have minutes. He had seconds. The smell of gasoline filled the air, thick and suffocating. Smoke hissed from the engine. Sparks flickered where metal scraped metal. The patrol car groaned, creaking dangerously under its own crushed weight. Patrick reached for the bent door frame. The cold metal bit into his fingers, sharp and unforgiving. He pulled with all his strength. Nothing moved. He gritted his teeth and pulled harder, muscles trembling, veins bulging along his arms. Rain washed down his face, mixing with sweat. The frame refused to give. His breath came out in ragged bursts, panic clawing at his chest. "Come on," he growled through clenched teeth. "Come on!" He thought of Lily sleeping at home. He thought of Melissa's blue eyes begging for help. He thought of how no one else was here. And he refused to fail. With a primal shout, he yanked the metal again. This time it groaned, bending just enough to slip his arm inside. The door cracked open, a small victory in a losing battle. The smell of fire reached his nose, sharp, terrifying. Patrick slid his arms under Melissa, lifting her as gently as he could. She was trembling, unconscious, her uniform soaked with rain and blood. Her head fell against his chest, cold skin pressing against his warmth. He held her tighter, fear exploding inside him. He backed away, carrying her in his arms, stumbling through the storm until they were several feet from the smoking vehicle. Every second stretched out like an eternity. He set her down carefully on the wet ground, brushing her hair from her face, whispering, "You're safe now. I've got you. Just breathe." And then a loud popping sound shattered the air. Patrick whipped his head around just as the cruiser burst into flames. A massive boom ripped through the night, flames shooting upward like a monster awakening in the darkness. The explosion lit the sky, sending shards of burning metal scattering across the pavement. Patrick instinctively shielded Melissa with his body, pulling her close, covering her as the shockwave rolled past them. The ground trembled beneath them. The night roared. The rain hissed against the fire. Patrick stared at the burning wreckage, heart pounding violently. If he had been 10 seconds later, if he hesitated for even a breath, she would have died in that fire. He looked down at the unconscious woman lying in his arms, her soft breath warming his chest, her face pale but still alive. "Hang on, Melissa," he whispered into the storm, voice trembling with emotion. "I didn't save you just to lose you now." Rain poured down in relentless sheets as Patrick lowered Melissa gently onto the soaked pavement. Her body shook uncontrollably in his arms, every tremor a reminder of how close she had come to death. Her breath came in shallow, fragile gasps, like her lungs weren't sure if they wanted to fight anymore. Her pulse tapped weakly against his fingertips, faint, almost fading. It terrified him more than the explosion behind them. He shrugged off his jacket, despite the freezing rain biting into his skin, and wrapped it around her trembling body. The jacket swallowed her, warm compared to the storm, and he tucked it close as if protecting a precious thing from the cold world. He leaned over her, voice soft but cracked with worry. "Stay with me. You're going to make it, I promise." Melissa's eyelids fluttered, barely lifting, but enough for him to see the blur of fear and confusion in her blue eyes. Rain dripped down her pale cheeks, mixing with streaks of dried blood. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "You saved my life. Why would you?" Patrick swallowed hard. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He didn't know this woman. He didn't know her story. But something about seeing her helpless, alone, bleeding in the dark, it hit him deep, deeper than he could explain. "Because somebody has to be brave for you right now, and I'm here." Her eyes softened at his words, as if his voice alone was holding her to consciousness, keeping her anchored in a world she was slipping away from. Patrick fumbled for his phone, dialing for help. The rain hammered the screen, the signal flickering. He stepped a few inches away, holding the phone high, trying to catch even a thin bar of service. Panic surged through him when the call kept failing. Come on," he muttered, voice shaking. Finally, the call rang through, but the reception was weak, cutting in and out. He shouted their location to the dispatcher, repeating it desperately until they confirmed help was coming. He returned to Melissa, kneeling beside her. Her breathing had grown shallower, her chest rising unevenly. Patrick felt his heart twist painfully. He had to keep her awake. He couldn't lose her after everything he did to pull her from that burning car. "Melissa," he whispered urgently, brushing wet hair from her forehead. "You've got to stay awake. Talk to me. Focus on my voice." She blinked slowly, her lashes heavy with rain. I was chasing a stolen truck." Her voice cracked and faded, but she forced it out. "He rammed me off the road. I thought I'd die. Alone." Those last words ripped into Patrick like a blade. No one deserved to die alone on a cold, dark road, especially not someone who risked their life for others. He felt something warm and protective rise deep in his chest, something fierce and overwhelming. He reached for her hand, small, cold, trembling, and wrapped his fingers around it. "Not on my watch," he said softly, yet firmly. His voice carried a promise, a vow, a certainty that he wouldn't let the darkness take her. Her fingers tightened around his weakly, but it was enough to show she was still fighting, still holding on, still trusting him. The rain softened for a moment, almost as if the storm itself paused to let them breathe. Patrick leaned closer, his face only inches from hers. Her breathing steadied slightly at the warmth of his words, as if his presence alone was giving her strength she didn't know she had left. "You're safe now, Melissa," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Her lips parted in the faintest smile, a fragile, grateful curve that made his chest ache. "You're kind," she breathed. "Too kind for a stranger." Patrick shook his head gently. "Not a stranger, not anymore." Her eyes closed again, but this time the fear in them eased, as if she finally believed she wasn't alone, as if she trusted him completely. And in that stormy darkness, with fire behind them and danger still lingering, something invisible formed between them. Something warm, human, powerful. A connection born in the middle of chaos. A bond made not by time, but by fate. "Help is coming," he whispered, holding her hand tighter. "Just stay with me, please." And she did. Because even in the coldest night, a stranger's kindness had become the light she desperately needed to survive. Sirens pierced through the rain-soaked night, flashing red and white against the dark sky as the ambulance and police units finally arrived. The storm reflected off their lights, turning the entire scene into a trembling dance of shadows and panic. Paramedics rushed toward the motionless figure on the ground, Melissa, while officers sprinted in all directions, searching for any sign of the suspect who had rammed her car. But the moment the medics reached her, they froze. She was alive. Barely, but alive. One of the officers, drenched from the rain, looked from the burning wreck to Melissa's trembling figure. His voice came out stunned, disbelieving. Who pulled her out? That car was seconds from exploding. Patrick felt suddenly small in the sea of uniforms. But he lifted his hand quietly, almost shyly. I did. For a moment, the rain was the only sound. Every officer turned to stare at him, not with suspicion, but with something like awe, shock, respect. They looked at him as if he had done something impossible. One officer knelt beside Melissa, checking her pulse, running practiced hands along her wounds. His eyes widened, the color draining from his face. He looked up at Patrick, breathless. Sir, if you hadn't held pressure on her chest, she would have died. You kept her breathing. You kept her heart going. Patrick blinked, stunned. He hadn't known. He only acted on instinct, pure, desperate instinct to keep her alive. Melissa's eyes fluttered open slightly, her lashes heavy with rain. With effort, she lifted a trembling hand, pointing weakly at Patrick. Her voice cracked, every word a struggle, but filled with truth so raw it pierced the cold air. He is the reason I'm still breathing. Her statement hit the officers harder than any explosion. These men and women had seen civilians run from danger, freeze in fear, scream for help from a distance. Almost nobody charged toward a burning police car. Nobody risked their life for a stranger in uniform. But Patrick had. Without training, without armor, without hesitation. The nearest officer stood up slowly, rain dripping from the brim of his hat as he studied Patrick's face. This ordinary man in soaked jeans and a worn-out shirt, shivering from the cold. There was nothing heroic about his clothes or his posture, nothing loud or attention-seeking, just quiet bravery. Sir, the officer said, voice thick with emotion, you saved one of our own. The police force had responded to hundreds of accidents, but this was different. Officers exchanged stunned glances, their expressions shifting from shock to deep respect. Patrick swallowed hard, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. I just did what anyone would do. But the officer shook his head firmly. No, most people panic, most people freeze, some just drive by. His eyes softened, but you ran straight toward fire. Another officer approached him, placing a steady hand on Patrick's shoulder. Do you realize what you did? You carried her out seconds before that cruiser blew. You didn't just save her life. You gave her a chance to see another sunrise. Patrick looked down at Melissa, who was being lifted carefully onto a stretcher by paramedics. Her hand reached out instinctively toward him, her fingers searching for his. The moment their hands touched, her breathing steadied, as if the connection reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. The officers noticed. They noticed everything. The way she clung to him with what little strength she had left. The way he leaned toward her, protective without even thinking. The invisible thread between a wounded cop and the man who refused to let her die. For a long moment, no one spoke. The rain fell softly around them, washing blood from the pavement, cooling the burning metal behind them. And in that stormy silence, every officer silently acknowledged a truth that shook them. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they're single fathers driving home on a lonely road. Sometimes they're ordinary people with extraordinary courage. And Patrick Miller had just changed the entire police force's understanding of what a true hero looks like. Melissa's survival felt like a miracle the doctors whispered about in hallways. Her body was bruised, stitched, bandaged, and shaken, but alive. The police force visited. The chief visited. Even strangers sent prayers. But the person she looked forward to seeing most, the one whose presence made her chest feel lighter, was Patrick. And he came, every single day. On the first day after she woke up fully, she opened her eyes to see a small girl with bright eyes standing beside her bed, holding a tiny bouquet of wildflowers. Lily, Patrick's whole world. Lily jumped a little when Melissa looked at her. Miss Melissa, Daddy saved you, she announced proudly, as if she were revealing a secret treasure. Melissa couldn't help but smile, even with her cracked lips and exhausted body. Her voice was soft, weak, but full of gratitude. He did. Your daddy is very brave. Lily nodded like she already knew that better than anyone else on Earth. Behind her, Patrick appeared carrying a thermos that smelled like warm comfort, homemade soup. Not store-bought, not microwaved, something he cooked with care, probably late at night after putting Lily to bed. Melissa felt warmth spread across her chest as she watched him set it down gently. "Thought you might like something real to eat," he said, brushing a loose blonde strand from her forehead without even realizing how tender the gesture looked. Days passed, then weeks, and every day Patrick returned. Sometimes he found her frustrated and sore from physical therapy, tears burning her eyes because her legs trembled too much. He would stand beside her, steadying her without touching unless she asked, encouraging her with a quiet strength that made her feel safe. "Come on," he'd whisper, "just one more step, I know you can." Other days she couldn't sleep, nightmares of the crash dragging her awake. Patrick would sit beside her in the dim hospital room, the lights low, just talking, about Lily, about cooking disasters, about funny things he saw. He didn't let the darkness swallow her thoughts. She confessed one of those nights, her voice trembling, "When that car flipped, when the world went upside down, I thought nobody would stop. I thought I'd die alone out there." Patrick's eyes softened with a deep, tender seriousness. "Good people still exist, Melissa. You're one of them. You deserved help, and I'm glad I was the one who found you." Her throat tightened at his words. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that, so gently, so honestly. Lily always climbed onto the hospital bed, telling Melissa all about her day. School, snacks, missing crayons. Her endless chatter filling the room with a bright, healing warmth no doctor could ever offer. Melissa found herself looking forward to that little voice more than any medication. One afternoon, as Patrick adjusted her pillows, their hands brushed accidentally. A small thing, a tiny touch. But her breath caught just a little, and his eyes lifted to hers, warm, steady, deep. Something unspoken passed between them. A bond formed slowly, naturally, softly, like two lost pieces recognizing each other. There was no rush, no dramatic declaration, just two hearts learning each other's rhythms, day by day, hour by hour. Melissa felt safe around him. Patrick felt understood by her. And Lily adored her. In the quiet corners of that hospital, between soup containers, whispered conversations, shared smiles, and trembling steps through recovery, a new friendship bloomed. A friendship filled with gratitude, warmth, and something deeper quietly growing beneath the surface, something neither of them dared name yet, but both of them felt. And it was beautiful. The day Melissa returned to duty felt surreal. The morning rain had softened into a gentle drizzle, leaving the streets glistening like liquid silver. Patrick received her call earlier, asking him to come to the station. He had hesitated at first, unsure why she needed him there, but curiosity and concern had won over. He pulled into the police parking lot in his old pickup truck, wearing his usual worn jeans and a gray t-shirt, soaked slightly from the drizzle. He wasn't dressed for ceremony, for applause, or for attention. He never was. That was never his way. He only came because Melissa had asked. As he stepped into the station, the murmurs and chatter of officers ceased immediately. Every head turned, every eye fixed on him. A silence filled the room, heavy and expectant. Confused, Patrick walked further inside, his heart pounding with unease. Suddenly, all the officers rose to their feet in unison, rainwater still dripping from their jackets and hats. Their eyes were serious, wide with awe, respect, and something more he couldn't yet name. Patrick froze in the doorway, unsure what was happening. The chief stepped forward, his expression solemn, voice echoing slightly in the large room. "Patrick Miller," he began, steady and commanding. "You risked your life to save one of our own, a member of this department. You pulled her from a burning car. You acted without thought for yourself. The entire police force owes you a debt of gratitude." Patrick's mouth opened, but no words came out. He felt heat rise in his chest, not from embarrassment, but from something deeper, an emotion he couldn't quite place. Pride? Relief? Gratitude? It was all mixed together, fierce and unfamiliar. Then Melissa appeared, stepping forward with her crisp new uniform, the gold badge on her chest shining even in the dim light. Her blue eyes were soft, glistening with emotion, and they locked on him. Patrick felt his breath hitch. She looked radiant. Even in uniform, even after all she had endured, she radiated strength and vulnerability at the same time. Melissa held a small box in her hands. Inside lay a special honorary badge, something the department only awarded in extraordinary circumstances. She stepped closer to Patrick, every officer watching in respectful silence. With careful hands, she pinned the badge on his chest over his heart. Patrick felt its weight, not heavy but meaningful, carrying the gravity of the honor and her gratitude. The room felt silent except for the soft drizzle tapping on the windows and the faint hum of the lights above. Patrick's eyes met hers, searching for words that wouldn't come. He felt exposed, humbled, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Melissa leaned in slightly, so close that he could feel her warmth even through the thin fabric of his t-shirt. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a melody. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Her words sank into him deeper than he could have imagined. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just admiration. There was something more, something personal, intimate, unspoken. A connection that had begun on that rainy night by the burning car and had grown quietly, unseen ever since. Patrick's throat tightened. He wanted to say something profound, something that would capture the storm of emotions inside him. But he only managed a simple, trembling, You don't have to thank me." Melissa shook her head gently, eyes never leaving his. "You saved me, Patrick. That night, you gave me a second chance at life. You were brave. You're brave." He swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. The sound of her words, the way she looked at him, the way she had trusted him with her life. It was overwhelming. For the first time in a long while, he realized that his courage, his instinct, and his heart had created something beautiful. Lily would have been proud of him. He thought of his daughter and how she had always believed in heroes, even when he doubted himself. Patrick allowed himself to feel proud, not of the badge, but of the life he had saved, of the bond that had formed. The other officers watched quietly, many shaking their heads in disbelief. Civilians rarely risked their lives for anyone. But Patrick had. And now, standing in the police station with Melissa before him, the rain softly falling outside, he realized that sometimes heroism came in quiet, selfless acts, without glory, without fanfare. Melissa reached out and placed her hand lightly over his. Her touch was brief, but it lingered in his mind like a spark, a promise, a silent connection. Patrick felt his heart swell with something he hadn't expected, something warm, protective, and thrilling all at once. The chief cleared his throat gently, breaking the intimate moment, but Patrick barely noticed. He was too captivated by Melissa, by her gaze, by the gratitude and trust in her eyes. In that moment, standing amid officers and flashing lights, Patrick realized something he hadn't before. Bravery and love often arrive together, quietly, unexpectedly, on stormy nights where lives hung in the balance. And tonight, he was feeling both, for the first time, with clarity and awe. Melissa smiled faintly, her fingers brushing against his again before she stepped back. The honorary badge gleamed on his chest, but it was more than metal. It was a symbol of courage, trust, and the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted, a bond forged in fire, rain, and sheer human kindness. Patrick took a deep breath, heart pounding, and finally found his voice. I just did what I had to do. I couldn't leave you." Melissa's smile deepened, eyes shimmering with emotion. "And that is why you're not just a hero, Patrick. You're extraordinary." The rain outside continued to fall, tapping softly against the windows, washing the world in silver light. And in the quiet aftermath, two hearts, once strangers, stood closer than ever, tethered by courage, trust, and something far more beautiful: the beginning of love. Weeks had passed since the crash, since the fire, since the terrifying night that had changed everything. Melissa had returned to duty, but the memory of Patrick's arms lifting her from the burning patrol car lingered in her mind like a vivid, haunting dream. And now she found herself standing at Patrick's doorstep, the rain falling softly around her, the same kind of night that had nearly stolen her life. Patrick opened the door, his hair damp from the drizzle, a little nervousness tugging at the corners of his face. He hadn't expected her tonight, yet somehow, seeing her there, he felt a familiar warmth rising through him. "Patrick, can we take a drive?" Melissa asked quietly, her voice gentle, almost shy. There was a softness in her eyes that made his chest tighten. "On that road, the one where you saved me." Patrick hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded, a small smile breaking across his lips. "Of course. Let's go." They climbed into his old pickup, the rain streaking across the windshield as Patrick started the engine. The headlights cut through the dark, wet road, reflecting off the puddles in a shimmering silver glow. Inside the cab, silence settled, heavy and intimate, filled with unspoken thoughts. As they drove, Melissa's gaze wandered to the window, watching the familiar blur of rain and streetlights. Her fingers traced the condensation forming on the glass, her mind replaying the night when everything had gone wrong. Finally, Patrick slowed near the spot where her patrol car had burned, the charred ground still faintly visible beneath the soft drizzle. He parked and cut the engine. The only sounds were the gentle patter of rain on the roof and the distant hum of traffic far away. Melissa stepped out first, her uniform replaced by a simple jacket and jeans, yet the memories of that night seemed to cling to her like a shadow. She turned to Patrick, voice soft and almost trembling. "That night, I thought I was dying. I thought the fire and the darkness would take me. But then, a man with the kindest eyes reached into the fire to save me." Patrick looked down, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. He shifted his weight, embarrassed by the intensity of her words. I'm just a single dad trying to do what's right," he muttered, shrugging slightly. Melissa shook her head gently, stepping closer. "You're more than that. You're brave. You're good. And—" She paused, her lips curving into a shy smile. "I'd like to know you better." Her words hung in the air, fragile and beautiful, carried by the soft rhythm of falling rain. Patrick felt a rush of warmth spread through his chest, a mixture of surprise, hope, and something tender that made his heartbeat quicken. He extended his hand slowly. "You really mean that?" Melissa's smile widened, her hand slipping into his, small but strong, her fingers curling around his with trust and quiet courage. The simple touch was electric, the intimacy of it more powerful than any words could express. The rain continued to fall, soft and steady, wrapping them in a cocoon of silver light and reflection. Patrick looked at her, really looked, noticing the faint streaks of freckles across her cheeks, the way her hair stuck slightly to her damp skin, the warmth that radiated from her even in the cold night. "I do," Melissa whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I want to know the man who risked everything for me, who saved me when nobody else would." Patrick's hand tightened gently around hers. "And I want to know you," he replied. "The brave, amazing woman who somehow made me feel alive in the middle of a storm." Melissa laughed softly, a sound that blended perfectly with the gentle tapping of rain. She stepped closer still, closing the distance until their foreheads almost touched. Her eyes searched his, blue and deep, vulnerable yet strong, as if asking a silent question only he could answer. "I think," she said, her voice low, "I've been waiting for someone like you all my life." Patrick's chest tightened, and he leaned in just slightly, not daring to rush but unable to resist. Then maybe we were both waiting for the same storm. The rain fell around them in gentle sheets, soaking their clothes but doing nothing to dampen the warmth spreading between them. Patrick could feel her heartbeat under his hand, her breath mingling with his in the quiet night. For a long moment neither spoke, letting the memory of that fateful night, the terror, the fire, the life-saving courage, transform into something tender, hopeful, and intimate. Two souls who had touched the edge of darkness now stood together in the quiet aftermath, bound by experience, gratitude, and something neither fully understood yet. Melissa's fingers brushed Patrick's cheek, her thumb lingering, tracing the faint stubble that had gone unnoticed in the chaos of that night. His eyes softened, and he leaned into her touch, savoring the fragile, perfect moment. "Patrick," she whispered, "thank you. For everything, for being there, for not leaving me." "I'll never leave you," he murmured back, voice firm yet gentle. "Not now, not ever." The rain continued to fall, washing the world clean in silver light, and for the first time since the night of the crash, both of them felt entirely safe, entirely alive, entirely connected. Melissa squeezed his hand, and Patrick felt a smile spread across his face, one that was quiet but full of promise. They stood together on that wet road, rain dripping from their hair and clothes, two hearts forever changed by a night of terror, courage, and the spark of something new, something beautiful, fragile, and unstoppable. And in that stormy night, with the world around them blurred by rain and memory, they both understood one undeniable truth. Sometimes the darkest nights bring the brightest light, and sometimes it brings love. A few months later, Melissa and Patrick had become inseparable. She bonded with Lily, helped her with homework, joined their simple dinners, and filled their home with warmth. One evening, while the three of them sat on the porch listening to the rain, Melissa whispered to Patrick, "Maybe fate didn't try to end my life that night. Maybe it tried to bring you into it." Patrick kissed her forehead gently. In the soft glow of the porch light, they held each other. Not as a cop and a stranger, but as two souls who found love in the darkest moment. Lesson: sometimes the people we save become the ones who save us back. Compassion, courage, and kindness can change lives, and even heal broken hearts.